Saving a large amount for retirement sounds like the finish line, but here's the strange part. Many people who reach that level don't feel secure. In fact, they often feel more pressure than before. Think about it. You spend decades building your savings, watching it grow, making smart decisions, and then one day, you hit a number that should mean freedom. But instead of relief, a new kind of tension shows up. You start thinking, what if things go wrong from here? You might wonder what happens if the market drops right after you stop working. Or what if you live longer than expected and the money slowly runs down? Maybe you even hesitate before spending on something meaningful, like travel or family experiences, because everything suddenly feels uncertain. This is a very real situation, and it happens more often than people expect. On paper, the numbers look strong, but emotionally, it doesn't always feel that way. The reason is simple. The game changes. When you were building your wealth, the focus was growth. You were adding money, investing regularly, and thinking long term. Time was on your side. Even if markets went down, you had years ahead to recover. But now, the mindset shifts. You are no longer building at the same pace. You are now relying on what you've already created. And that changes how every decision feels. A market drop doesn't just look like numbers on a screen anymore. It feels like a direct hit to your lifestyle. A percentage loss suddenly translates into something very real, something you worked years to build. At the same time, your income situation changes. If you're no longer working or close to it, the safety net of future earnings becomes smaller. That naturally makes you more cautious. And this is where things get interesting. Because when researchers look at long-term data, they often find something surprising. People who follow conservative withdrawal strategies rarely run out of money. In many cases, their portfolios actually grow over time, even while they are spending. Yet despite this, most people spend far less than they safely could. There's a gap between what is possible and what actually happens in real life. And that gap isn't created by math, it's created by psychology. People hold back, they delay plans, they avoid spending. Not because they have to, but because they feel unsure. That hesitation can quietly turn into missed opportunities, trips not taken, moments not experienced, freedom not fully used. So the real challenge at this stage is not just protecting money, it's learning how to use it with confidence. One of the biggest shifts that needs to happen is moving from simple growth thinking to smarter decision making. Earlier in life, your focus might have been straightforward. Invest regularly, stay consistent, avoid mistakes. Over time, that approach works well. But once your wealth reaches a certain level, small decisions start to have a bigger impact. It's no longer just about growing your money. It's about how you manage it efficiently. For example, where your money is placed can matter just as much as how much you have. Different types of accounts are treated differently when it comes to taxes. And over time, that can change how much you actually get to keep. Then there's the order in which you use your money. Taking funds from one place before another can affect your long-term outcome. These decisions may seem small, but over years they add up. Another important factor is timing. Sometimes, making adjustments earlier can reduce future pressure. Waiting too long can limit your options. The key idea here is that once you reach this level, strategy becomes more important than effort. Another shift that becomes important is moving away from rigid rules. A lot of financial advice is built around simple guidelines. These can be helpful in the beginning. They provide structure and make decisions easier. But as your situation becomes more complex, strict rules don't always fit perfectly anymore. Life is not fixed. Expenses change, markets move, personal priorities evolve. So instead of following a single number every year, it can be more useful to think in ranges. Some years you may spend a little more, other years a little less. The goal is not perfection, it's balance. You also start thinking more about different scenarios. What if inflation stays higher than expected? What if markets take longer to recover? What if your expenses shift later in life? Planning for these possibilities doesn't mean expecting the worst. It simply gives you clarity, and clarity reduces stress. Another area where flexibility helps is how you manage your investments over time. Instead of adjusting everything on a fixed schedule, it can be more effective to respond to actual changes. When certain parts of your portfolio move too far in one direction, that can be a natural signal to make adjustments. This approach can help keep your plan aligned without overreacting. Now, here's a shift that most people don't think about early enough. At some point, the question stops being, will I have enough? And it becomes, what do I want this money to actually do? Because if your basic needs are covered and your plan is stable, then money becomes a tool for something bigger. This could mean helping your family, supporting causes that matter to you, creating experiences that you value, or simply making life easier and more enjoyable. When you start thinking this way, something changes internally. Instead of holding on tightly to every decision, you begin to see your money as something that can create impact, not just something that needs to be protected. And interestingly, this shift often makes spending feel more comfortable because it now has a purpose. At this stage, clarity is powerful. Knowing where your money is going, knowing how your future looks, knowing that you have a plan in place. This kind of structure can remove a lot of uncertainty. A practical way to think about it is to separate your money based on time. Some funds are meant for the near future. These are stable and predictable. They give you peace of mind because they are not affected by daily market movements. Other funds are meant for the medium term. They carry some movement but are still relatively steady. And then there are long-term investments. These are designed to grow over time. They may go up and down, but they have the space to recover and expand. When you look at your money this way, it becomes easier to make decisions. You know which part is for spending now and which part is for later. That clarity alone can reduce a lot of anxiety. Because one of the biggest fears people have is not knowing where their next few years of expenses will come from. Once that is clear, the rest becomes easier to manage. Now, let's talk about something most people don't expect. The biggest risk at this stage is not always the market. It's not always inflation either. In many cases, it's regret. People look back and realize they were too cautious. They waited too long. They didn't fully use the freedom they had. They stayed in a mindset of saving, even when it was time to start enjoying. And that creates a different kind of loss, one that can't be recovered later. Because time moves in one direction. Experiences have a window. Opportunities don't always come back. So the real question becomes, what are you optimizing for? Is it just to preserve wealth, or is it to actually live well? In my opinion, this is where most people need to pause and think. Because building wealth is one phase. Using it wisely is another. And the second phase requires a different mindset. It requires balance, awareness, and sometimes the willingness to loosen control just a little. Not recklessly, but intentionally. Because at the end of the day, money is not the goal. It's a tool. And its real value comes from how it supports your life. So if you've reached a point where your finances are strong, maybe the next step is not just asking how to protect it, but asking how to experience it. Because true financial success is not just about what you have, it's about what you allow yourself to do with it.